this event to celebrate the creation and opening of the COER, as we say here, COER, the Center for Open Education Research at the Faculty of Educational and Social Sciences and the Institute of Education. I'm very happy to see all the friends and colleagues and familiar faces here. We are about 50, 60 participants from 12 different countries, so this is really an international event. And yeah, I have to take the time, or I would like to take the time to say deeply thank you to the Ministry of Education, Research and Culture of Lower Saxony and the University Society Oldenburg, who sponsored this symposium, which allowed us to invite you and our speakers today. Regrettably, I was informed this morning that our Vice President for Early Career Researchers and International Affairs, Professor Esther Ruigendijk, is sick and can't be with us here to say some welcoming words, but this gives me the opportunity to talk a bit more about the COER and who we are and what we do. So what are the aims and what is the purpose of the COER? The first purpose is, of course, to make visible our international research activities and to conduct international research activities and to invite colleagues and scholars to come to Oldenburg and all other places around the world to meet and to discuss and to work together. And we are supporting all the idea of openness in higher education. And the main purpose, of course, of the COER is to create a stimulating environment for internal and external research fellows. And it's so nice that almost all the COER members are here now today in the room. And also we are planning, or we are currently developing a new master's program. I will talk about this in a minute. In order to translate research into practice and knowledge transfer as well. So my vision or wish for the COER would be that the COER will be an international hub for research into open education. And this, of course, depends on the people who work in and with the COER, and I think we already have put together a great team. But before I introduce the founding COER members, I would like to say a few words about the notion of open education. As I said, we are supporters of the idea of openness in education, in higher education in particular. But what kind of openness do we mean when we talk about open education? There are so many open terms in the context of teaching and learning, but also in the context of research, like open learning, open pedagogy, OER, open textbooks in the American discussion, or open access publishing, open data, open peer review. And many writers argue that a culture of open scholarship and practices is needed to propel this idea of openness in education. At least in the German discussion, open education is often reduced to topics related to aspects of open educational resources. But open education is an omnibus term that comprises a lot more than access to educational resources. And here comes the first working definition for the COER. I would say open education in the context of higher education refers to a set of open educational practices that aim at widening access to university education. Access is gained through admission without entry requirements, open learning, but rather through the recognition of formally and informally acquired qualification and competencies, like in the prior learning, accreditation and recognition. Digital media and learning materials, for example, OERs, tools and systems are used to provide flexible learning opportunities worldwide, independent of time and space. Of course, we can argue and quarrel about this definition, but this would be my starting point that I would like to suggest here. So, who is participating in the COER? Let's have a very quick round of introductions. So this is the German group. There is Marco Kaltz. Marco?
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. He is a professor of technology enhanced learning, now at Heidelberg University of Education, but he worked for 15 years at the Open University of the Netherlands, where he was and still is the UNESCO Chair of Open Education. Then we have Kerstin Meyerberger. She is not here, she's on sabbatical now. Kerstin is a professor of media education and head of the Hamburg Open Online University at the University of Hamburg. Michael Keres, he is a professor of educational media and knowledge management at the Learning Lab at the University of Duisburg-Essen. He wanted to come, but he was on holidays in Greece and his flight was cancelled on Sunday. So I hope that he can join us tomorrow, hopefully. Then we have our Turkish friends and colleagues. There is Professor Hakan Aydin, who's over there. Welcome, Hakan. He's the Dean of the Open Education. He was the Dean of the Open Education Faculty at Anadolu University in Eskişehir in Turkey. And also Dr. Aras Bozkurt. Hello, Aras. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the same institution. And then we have Yaja Kondaci over there. He's from METU, Middle East Technical University in Ankara. And he's a professor of educational administration and planning at METU. Welcome. Albert Sangra, he's not here. He is from the Open University of Catalonia in Spain and UNESCO Chair in Education and Technology for Social Change. And then we have from Japan, Professor In-Sung Jung, Professor of Educational Technology as well. From Tokyo, welcome In-Sung. Adnan Kayyum, Professor of Adult Education from Penn State University. Welcome, Adnan. And Diane Conrad as well from Canada, from Athabasca University, Canada's Open University. And she's also the editor, or one of the editors of iRodel. George Valencianos, Professor George. He's the Canada Research Chair in Innovative Learning and Technology at Royal Roads University in British Columbia. Then, of course, Colin Latcham is a founding member, and I will say more about Colin later. And we have Som Naidu. He is the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Flexible Learning at the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. I think he made the longest way to come to Oldenburg. When you start to dig there, you will come out here in Oldenburg. Jingjing Chang, she's from Beijing Normal University, but also not here today. Professor of Educational Technology, attention, at the Big Data Institute. Wow. And finally, Professor Yunhong Chao. Yunhong, where are you? Ah, here. He's from Chantu Radio and Television University, a local branch of the Open University in China. And he's the guest editor of the International Forum of the journal Distance Education in China. And finally, we have our South African colleagues. There is Jenny Roberts. Where are you? Jenny, Professor of Education and Paul Prinsloo, Professor of Open and Distance Learning. Welcome, Jenny and Paul. And of course, finally, we have, of course, the postdoctoral researchers and research associates working here in Oldenburg at the COER, at the Institute of Education, Victoria, Wolfgang, Svenja, Melissa, Karina, and Andrea. So that's quite a credible bunch of people coming together here. I would like to say thank you for coming. I'm looking forward to working together with you. And when I prepared for this meeting, I asked our colleagues to let me know with whom they have already worked together in a project, as a co-author on a paper, or as an editorial board member. And this is the social network diagram that emerged from this analysis. That's the COER network with 24 colleagues from 10 different countries. And the point I would like to make here is that the COER is not just a virtual thing with some top shot names. It's really a living network of active collaboration. Of course, I must apologize for being a bit egocentric here, because I was the one who started the whole thing. They all have some kind of relationship with me. That's because I'm there in the center. But this will change, hopefully. That's why we are here, to start new ties in the network. Yeah, I just would like to highlight a few things that we have already done together. We are doing, for example, systematic reviews and content analysis to explore research trends and to synthesize research results to inform evidence-based practice. So, for example, together with Tom, we did a content analysis of his journal over 35 years, or one about the journal Computers in Education. Together with Michael Keres, Melissa, Svenja, and Katja, we are currently editing a new book about systematic reviews in educational research. The book will be published with Springer Open at the end of next year. Then quality assurance is another important topic on the institutional meso level. In-Sung Jung and Colin did a lot of work on quality assurance and accreditation in distance education and e-learning. And they also developed a framework for the evaluation of open educational resources. And in the German context, we developed a quality model for OER together with the Hamburg Open Online University and Kerstin Meyerberger. And this model is also based on this framework that Colin and In-Sung developed. Then on the micro level of learning and teaching in open and distance learning, we are looking at media usage patterns of students for their learning at the university. And the results are helpful to improve the instructional design and to inform the media selection process within the instructional design process. Over 4,000 students participated in this study, and the results were published in iRodel. And Yunhong Chao translated the paper into Chinese, and it was also published in Distance Education in China. Going back on the macro level of open and distance education systems, we just published a book in which we contrasted and compared ODE systems in different countries. The first volume is about Australia, Europe, and the Americas, and the second volume will be released hopefully next month. November. Yeah, it's next month. Yeah, it's next month. This will be about Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Finally, took a long time. For me, as I said, prior learning accreditation and recognition is part of open education, as it is all about widening access to higher education for non-traditional students. And a leader in this field is Diane Conrad. Diane facilitated a workshop for us, I think 2 years ago, and in the meantime we have implemented a PLAR service. We call it Anrechnung or PLARnet, which is highly successful. And many students benefit from this service now, and I think this is a very good example for translating open education research into practice and make it happen. And finally, we are also doing research in the field of international education. Many institutions are now using online education to reach international target groups. For example, I learned that in Australia, the international education activity is the biggest service export industry. All the students from Asia taking degrees online from Australia. And in one study that was recently published in the journal Higher Education, we investigated the flow of international student mobility and identified, for example, Turkey, here, there is Turkey, as an emerging regional hub for international student mobility. Hopefully it will stay as it is. And last but not least, I am happy to announce that we are currently developing a new fully online Master of Management of Technology Enhanced Learning program, the MTEL, that will be offered together with our colleagues from the Center for Lifelong Learning here in Oldenburg, and Lisa Blaschke, hello Lisa, will be the program director for this program. The accreditation will be done next year, and we will start to enroll the first students in the winter term 2019-2020. And I'm very glad about our cooperation with UNISA, the University of South Africa. Professor Gugu Moche, the vice president of UNISA, was here in summer to sign a memorandum of agreement. And within the MTEL, we will offer a certificate program for professional staff development at UNISA. So quite a bit things are already going on in the COER. And to speak in social network analysis terms, we are now here to further improve the density and betweenness of our network. It would be now time for the keynote. To be presented by Professor Colin Letcham. Although we are here to celebrate the opening of the COER, I have to share the sad news that the passing of our dear colleague, friend, and founding member, Professor Colin Letcham. And I would like to take some time to pay tribute to this great man and pioneer in the field of educational technology. Colin was born in England in 1933. And he very suddenly and unexpectedly passed away on the 3rd July 2018 in Perth, Australia, aged 84. And this photo was taken just one day before he died. Yeah. I had the honor and privilege to co-author the last paper together with Colin. And in this article, we did a content analysis of the journal Computers and Education over the last 40 years. And I was born around the time when this journal was launched. But Colin, he was already a pioneer in the UK in educational television and learning resources, and he founded the Learning Resources Unit at Stranmills College of Education, which is now part of Queen's University in Belfast. His first experience of distance education was during his national service in the UK, when he was involved in designing learning materials for use in Royal Army Education Corps centers around the world and on troop ships going to the Korean War. So he literally lived through the whole development of new and emerging technology and media over time, and we made up a great team together and worked well over 1 year on that paper. And I learned so much from Colin discussing the various topics over 4 decades. We met only twice in person, 2012 in Sydney and 2017 in Melbourne, but we exchanged hundreds of emails, and I would proudly call him one of my academic fathers. In 1982, Colin accepted a position at Curtin University of Technology in Perth, Australia, where he became head of the Teaching and Learning Group. And he retired from the university in 1998, but he never stopped working. Colin's wife, Marion, sent me an email in which she wrote about Colin's work and relationships with colleagues after retirement. And I would like to quote her here and read from this email. She wrote to me, "All Colin's various projects, activities, articles and books are too numerous to mention, but perhaps some of the highlights for him were the opportunities he had to meet people from all over the world, whom he loved and respected. None more so than your good self, Olaf, Professor Som Naidu, Professor In-Sung Jung, with whom he had a very long and productive working relationship, Professor Toshio Kobayashi in Japan, and his very good friends, Professor Ali Ekrem Özkul and family in Turkey, Professors Nick Rushby and Fred Lockwood in England, Professor Tony Bates in Canada, and all his recent new friends at the Federal University of Kazan in Russia, from where he just returned a few weeks before his death, to name but a very few. He was always willing to help advance the careers of young academics. He was especially proud of his involvement in setting up telecenters in remote and rural Western Australia. He was honored to be invited 3 times to be a visiting professor at the National Institute of Multimedia Education in Japan, and to be invited often to Anadolu University in Turkey to run workshops on strategic planning and staff development. And he has been nominated for the Asian Association of Open Universities Meritorious Service Award, supported by 3 senior professors at Anadolu University in Turkey, and by Sir John Daniel, Professor In-Sung Jung, and Professor Asha Kanwar from the Commonwealth of Learning. As Marion wrote, the person that probably worked together with Colin most closely over the last decade or longer is In-Sung Jung from the International Christian University in Tokyo. So In-Sung, may I ask you to step up here and say a few words about In-Sung, about Colin as well?
Thank you very much. Thank you. When I first met Colin, it was in Seoul, Korea. I'm now working in Japan, but I'm originally from Korea. So that time I was in my mid-30s, and he was in his, I guess, late 50s. We were pretty young back then, I think. And as Olaf already mentioned, that Colin was a great educator and scholar, I like to talk a little bit about his personal side. He was a very sincere family man, and I think he knew how to balance work and life, especially life with precious family members. We often, sacrifice for our work. Every year, no matter how busy he was, when we work on book project, he will stop at some point during the summer. And then he take almost two months, a long break. I didn't understand that time, why we are such a very busy schedule. But he always took a break and go somewhere with Marion. And such a nice place like southern France. And he won't do anything. He communicate with me very, once in a while. 1 or 2 times per month, maybe. And just going around and having a coffee and drawing and, to me, it was doing nothing for 2 months. But then he visited his family who are living in England, his children, and then his grandchildren. And he sometimes sent me pictures. Oh, I'm having such a good time while I was working. So, but then sometimes they went to luxurious cruise cruise trip, and then visit all these new exciting places. And I think now thinking of those days, I think I learned a lesson from him that he knew how to cherish the ones we love. We sometimes ignore. I think you are here, but you work so hard. We often don't think about our family members, those very close to us. But he always made time for his family and his friends. And I'm sure that Olaf also discussed some personal matters with him while we are working on some project. I think that was a very big lesson in my case from him. Another point that I remember Colin as an artist. I'm not sure how many of you know that he majored art. And let me show you some of his drawings. This one was, I think it was France, in southern part of France. I don't remember which village. This is his sketch. Another one is this. Anyone recognize the place? Another one is this. Very thoroughly, meticulously done. And this one. He was sitting in a small cafe and then draw this kind of sketches. Isn't it beautiful? So I think I can go on and on, talk about this, his dreams and his interests and his wisdom for many, many hours. But I like to stop here. But then just one thing before I go, Colin was a really warm friend. And he is not, as much as he was true scholar with integrity, and he knew how to love friends as well as family. For that, I really miss him a lot, and we will talk. We talk hours and hours through Skype. You said hundreds of emails. I got thousands of emails. I really learned a lot, and I think I will miss him for many. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my memories with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Insu.